All right. I got your questions on now the different physical and mental uh, aspects, stresses, whatever of law enforcement. And I thought the best way to go do this is just to go through the questions. I'm not going to show them on screen, although I hope you enjoy the things you do see here. I found a couple of pictures I thought you might find entertaining. So, anyway, one question here is: what kind of training is offered or required for officers in regards to mental health disorders that they may run into, such as autism, dementia, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, and why don't departments require more training for mental health disorders? The vast majority of departments, say at the state level, most state departments do require a part of their training anymore. It's becoming an increasing issue and increasing part of training is a segment of that training that talks about how to handle those with different mental disabilities, such as autism. Dementia and Alzheimer's isn't really discussed a whole lot, but they do discuss it. They discuss basically the general premise on how to handle uh, typical people with some type of mental disorder, how to recognize that someone may have one. We don't go into great depth, or most agencies don't go into great depth about each specific um, disorder like you would in, say, a psychology class. And that's why I strongly suggest that people take abnormal psychology. Granted, I'm biased because I have my degree in psychology, but I think that is really would be more beneficial. But you are seeing more and more departments, even for like the basic, what they call basic academy in Indiana. So it's basically anything else other than state. Um, they do have components within their training for dealing with the mentally ill. So that's not an issue, and I don't know what Evansville does. I assume they cover part of that, but either way, um, yeah, there's definitely more requirement for that anymore. Okay. And this is something a number of people ask about, so maybe I can cover multiple questions with this one. How do departments treat post-traumatic stress syndrome, or in essence PTSD, or disorder? I said syndrome, but it's disorder. That's what officers are experiencing. They give a set amount of time off. Is it paid time off, unpaid? Do they offer therapy sessions, treatments, etc.? Okay, so a lot of that depends on the department itself. The department, what they're able to do, um, what they can afford, how many officers they actually have, things like that. But I will say that when it comes to dealing with that, some of your larger city and state departments do have psychologists, not so much psychiatrists, that's a whole different thing, but psychologists to help in those regards. You can also go to chaplains, and some of them are also certified to do counseling. Um, and so that's essentially, and what you tend to have, uh, even before someone gets technically diagnosed with PTSD, they will, if there's an incident involved, like a shooting that takes place, if an officer observed a death of another officer or someone on scene or something like that, there's typically some type of debriefing that takes place. And so and a lot of times, especially if a weapon is used, it doesn't have to be anybody injured. But if there's a weapon that gets discharged or anything like that, they will have a time frame where you actually will be off of work. You'll still be paid unless, now if there's an investigation about a wrongful shoot, okay, that's different. But if it's something else, you may have to go into like a debriefing. You have to actually get drug tested, have your get a sample to see, make sure toxicology basically, for that incident. But other than that, as far as the mental side of it, yeah, you do have debriefing, and you do have um, a lot of departments will have some type of help. If it's not within the department, they have connections within the state or within their local jurisdiction of therapists that work with the department. And some people might say, oh, well, a normal therapist can't help a police officer. I don't understand why this job would be any different than other jobs. I understand there is a different stress level of this job, but as far as from a psychological standpoint, therapists do the same job whether they are working with law enforcement or anybody from any other field. Some of them are better suited for it, but nonetheless, it's the same basic approach. So you don't have to have a special therapist just for every like for every specific type of job out there. A lot of these people have counseling backgrounds. They have also have whether they're psychologists and have masters or doctorates, whatever. They have clinical time under their belt. It doesn't matter, like I said, if they are hired specifically for law enforcement. If they are actually, we have some officers who are hired as officers but end up becoming counselors for those particular reasons anyway. So that, I hope, covers that avenue. I mean, they're doing a better job of it anymore. Not every department has those options, like especially the really small departments. But a lot of them will have connections. Like, so for the local, health, especially mental health departments, things like that, they kind of help them with that. If not, they will get them in contact with people who can within the state. So people aren't usually just left out. It's usually the more so the officers aren't so sure about participating because they don't want to seem like they're mentally or physically, weak in any way, and that's one thing that a hurdle that people have to overcome. Okay, so hopefully that helps answer those questions. Okay, another question was about whether an officer are there ways officers rephrase that. Are there any ways for officers to prevent arresting someone because of mental health issue? The problem we have with that that started long before I even was working was we used to be able to have more state institutions to be able to put people who are mentally ill in those facilities, but then the states decided to close those down for financial reasons, also political reasons too, but mostly financial. So yeah, we're kind of stuck with a few options for those people that have mental illness. Honestly, it depends on the situation. If the person is committing a crime and is a threat to other people, then I don't see what the issue is. If they're a threat to another person or to themselves, just like any other person, uh, and they are in violation of the law, we have to do something. And so therefore, that doesn't mean we always have to put them in jail, but we do. There are times when we have to arrest them, and so you can't just say, "Oh, well, that person's mentally ill, I'm not going to arrest them." Sometimes it's for their own protection that you put them in your custody. Now you have to do so a little differently in terms of how you treat them and how you speak with them and things like that. But nonetheless, you still have to do your job, and hopefully your department will have uh, different options for you other than just sitting them, putting them in a jail cell. So, like I said, that depends on your jurisdiction. I apologize for not having a better answer, but honestly, it's where we're at with law enforcement and the criminal justice system right now is trying to figure out how to get those mental health hospitals and facilities kind of back up and running, or some way to get people the help they need without just because putting them in jail is not necessarily going to help them uh, in some of those cases. So, okay, I will. There are a couple questions about the academy that I want to address. Maybe I can, like I said before, maybe I can kind of kill a couple birds with one stone here. It says, what are the rules in the academy if you get injured? Okay, and someone else asked the same thing. Basically, if you break a leg or bone, whatever. So essentially, what happens in the academy, because I witnessed people getting hurt. I myself got hurt afterwards. It wasn't in the academy, but it was during training. But either way, for the other people that got hurt, I have seen them a number of things. It depends on a couple. There are different factors that go into it. How far into the academy are you? How extensive or how serious is the injury itself? Those are probably the two major things, and also what are the needs of the department. But usually, what happens is if you are injured, and it's severe enough, you will be, in essence, lack of better terms, washed out, or you'll be taken out of that academy class and you can be put in the next one. That's one way. They can take you out and say, well, you can reapply the next time we have a hiring process. You can apply again and go through the process again. Okay, that's second option. Third option is probably the one that most people want, which is your injury isn't that major, and you can, take a little, say, decrease your PT requirements for, up to a couple weeks and let your body heal well enough to get through. I had a guy that I went to the academy with. He had blown his knee out 3 different times. This was the third time. This is the third academy he had started to go to. It was only like, say, 3 or 4 weeks into ours when he blew his ACL. He was basically done. They said, sorry, you've had 3 attempts. I don't think this is going to work out for your own safety. So had another guy break his leg. It was more so like a stress fracture. 3 weeks off, but we were far enough into the academy, we're almost done, that they basically said, well, we'll let you go on that, and not let you go, but we will let you recover and then be able to go through move on to the district that you're going to work for. Let's see. But then, yeah, like I said, the last one, I had a couple people that, like I said, would get minor injuries and you move on. But some of them are major enough that they will tell you, sorry, we can't help you with this. And you don't have any union, which I'm not a huge fan of unions anyway, but you don't have any union support while you are in the academy in most cases, because you are considered an at-will employee at that point in time, not a full-fledged sworn officer. So, all right. Hopefully that helped answer that question. And I know I'm getting a little close on some of the time, and I didn't realize I was going to make 2 videos, but it looks like I'm going to have to. So that's the end of that one. Although, let's see if there's another question I can answer real quick. Let's see. So I'm going through here some of these. We already talked about that. Okay. It looks like I'm going to answer the other ones in another video, just because that's what's going to work best. So, and I'm not sure where I'm at on time, because I don't have a stopwatch where I can see it. So anyway, I will talk to you soon in the second half of answering your questions. So take care.